In this lesson, we'll incorporate a textured frog eye into our forest creature's eyes, in addition to adding texture to the eyelids. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we started bringing over and incorporating just those different rock shapes as we pulled from those two images of rock formations. And I really think that that added another level of storytelling to our forest creature concept. Again, we're pushing this concept to feel like he's a creature that was born of the earth. And so we want to basically continue incorporating more organic elements as we now focus on the eyes. So let's actually have a look at an eye texture that our own Justin Marshall created. And this was for one of his ZBrush courses on sculpting eyes. And this is one of several eyes that he designed for that course. So this is actually a frog eye. And I really like the overall organic design that we have here. I think it will complement very nicely everything that we've already incorporated on our own concept here. So before I bring this over, I'm just going to go ahead and go to Image, Adjustments, and Desaturate. Again, I'm not really interested in bringing over any color information as we build up our concept using textures. So just using my Move tool, I'll bring that over. We'll go ahead and move that window out of the way there. And now I'm going to go ahead and basically hit Control-T on our keyboard, and I'm just free transforming that eye. And I'm just scaling it down considerably. And now we're kind of placing it right over those two specks that I basically dropped in when I sketched out our concept. Let's go ahead and zoom out and just kind of see how that looks. I really like that. Again, I like kind of the organic nature of the eye itself. I think it complements the textures that we already have. Now, what I would like to do is just grab my brush tool and just using a hard round brush set to pressure sensitivity in our brush panel, I just want to add like a little specular highlight dot, just kind of right there. I feel like that adds just a little bit more dimension just to the eye itself. So what I'd like to do now is we'll go over here to our Layers panel. I'm going to right click on our frog eye layer and just duplicate that layer. And we'll use our Move tool. I'm just going to bring that eye over to the opposite side, to the left side of his head, or the screen right, if you will. And I'm free transforming one more time. I'm just sizing the eye down just slightly. I'm kind of putting into the account that there's a little bit of foreshortening taking place, just given that we have his head at kind of a 3/4 view. We're seeing just less information basically from that side. So I feel pretty comfortable now. I'm going to go ahead and just merge these two layers together. I'm pretty happy with the overall size and placement of these eyes. Now we already have texture applied to the upper and lower eyelids, and this is from when we basically blocked in our base skin using that stone and concrete texture. But I'm kind of imagining his eyelids as maybe being a little bit more of a sensitive area, just not as rough and hard as the rest of his skin. So we're going to use a texture that we've already used before. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. And this is of that coral texture. Now when we were blocking in our skin, we actually used some of this coral texture, and we can kind of see it right in here. We used a blend mode to basically kind of give a pitted kind of blemish look to that skin, just using kind of an overlay blend mode. But in this case, we're not going to use any blend mode. We're just going to pull directly just different forms from this coral, much like we did with our rock shapes, and just kind of apply those over the upper and lower eyelids. So with that said, I'm just grabbing my lasso tool, and we may want to just kind of start with kind of this little area right here. So I think that'll work nicely. So having made that selection, I'll just go ahead and pull that over using my Move tool. And we'll go ahead and zoom in here. And I'm just going to free transform this coral and kind of place that over the upper eyelid. So I'm using this coral texture just because it kind of has a nice porous look to it. And so I imagine this area of his upper and lower eyelids as being just a little bit softer, kind of very porous and squishy, kind of sponge-like. And I think this coral texture will allow us to achieve that visually. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and right-click again so we can warp this while we're still in free transform mode. And I'm just kind of manipulating the overall form of this texture. Okay, and I think I've almost got it just right where I want it to be. We can kind of zoom out there, and I think that'll work nicely. I'm going to go ahead and commit to that change. Now obviously it's super bright, it's very highlighted. So let's go ahead and apply an adjustment layer. I'm just going to do brightness and contrast. And of course I want to clip this layer so I'm only affecting that texture. I'm just going to bring kind of the brightness way down, the contrast way up. So I'm kind of trying to set it into that shadowed area. Again, his brow kind of is very heavy, so there's a lot of shadow in there. And now I'll jump back down to that layer. I'm just going to grab my eraser tool, just double check our brush settings over here in our brush panel, and that'll work nicely. Just a hard round brush using transfer. I'm just going to kind of erase away, kind of weave in this texture just a little bit more. Just kind of blending that in there just a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring over another one of these little porous textures for the bottom eyelid. So coming back over here to our coral, I may want to try this little spot right here. Again, I like the overall porous nature of that coral. I feel like it kind of gives a spongy look to his upper and lower eyelids. Now I also like having the blacks, just that black around the eye. I don't really want any whites of the eye. I think that adds kind of a menacing factor to our forest creature. Imagining him as kind of being a protector of some sort of forest realm, perhaps. Plus having white around the eye kind of makes him feel a little bit more human, which is something I'm trying to avoid. So once again, I've free transformed and warping just this overall form to kind of fit that lower eyelid. Okay, cool. And again, I'll go ahead and try another adjustment layer. I'll just kind of tweak the overall brightness and contrast. Again, I'm just trying to really focus on getting all my values established as I bring in all these textures before I focus on color. So I'll just use my eraser tool now and just kind of weave in this texture a little bit more here. Now eventually, once we've gotten all of our textures blocked in place, we're going to basically start refining the overall image later on in this course. We're going to be doing just a little bit of painting, a little bit of cloning, just to kind of start weaving and detailing all of these different elements that we're incorporating. But again, we're still just in the texture blocking phase. Now, one thing I may want to do is we'll grab our brush tool, and on our adjustment layer, I may want to kind of erase away just a little bit of that adjustment layer, just using black on that mask to kind of show a little bit of a highlight. That may just be a little bit bright, so we can always kind of rein that back in. With the upper eyelid, I'm not going to really do that too much because I'm trying to keep it more in shadow, and it's up there kind of close to that overlapping area of the brow. We could maybe try just a little bit. Of course, we want to switch to black. So just kind of making a quick comparison what we've done so far, I think that adds just another level of storytelling to our concept. We'll go ahead and kind of finish out here in this lesson, adding some texture to this eyelid area over here. So we'll jump back to our coral and just kind of examining this, trying to find just another interesting shape. Again, I am thinking about just the overall light source. The light source is obviously coming from this direction, and so I want to think about the lighting as I not only pull from this, but also as I weave it into our concept over here. And I may want to go ahead and pull from this area just right here. I think that might work. Let's go ahead and try that out. And once again, we'll free transform. And I've basically rotated it to where I've got more of those shadows kind of right here on the underside. We'll just kind of start to warp this texture. Just fitting this form over the form that we basically already had established underneath. So that really does help already, kind of having something to go by. Okay, and I'll go ahead and commit to that. And we'll do another adjustment layer, just playing around with the brightness and contrast. Just taking that brightness way down, kind of bringing up that contrast a little bit. We'll jump back down to that layer, just using my eraser tool. Just kind of weaving that in there a little bit, kind of erasing out some of the edges there. And just kind of zooming out to see how that looks. I may want to jump back up there to that adjustment layers mask. And just using black, kind of reveal a little bit of that original value there where it was just a lot lighter. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and make a comparison one more time. And again, I think that really does add a lot to our character. Kind of breathes in just a little bit more life into him just by kind of fleshing out the eyes, adding those frog eyes in there really does add just a little bit more life to the character. So in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and change gears once again, and we're going to start focusing on the mouth interior. We want to go ahead and kind of give a little bit of texture to the tongue and his teeth. Despite them being very jagged, we want to basically kind of weather them just a little bit more. They feel kind of clean for the kind of character that we're basically developing right now. So stick around, and we're going to focus on that in the next lesson.